Andy Robertson of Liverpool suffered a very bad looking shoulder injury today where essentially he needed to be helped off of the field with a member of the medical staff. As of right now, there is some speculation as to what is going on with the shoulder, but on the actual injury video, it looks like this is exactly what we would see with something known as an anterior shoulder dislocation. When a person suffers an anterior shoulder dislocation, it's usually in the mechanism of where the arm is actually in a position known as abduction and external rotation. And since some people may not be too familiar with that, I want to go ahead and focus on that with this video. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my channel. If you're not familiar with me, my name is Nick Gallo and I'm a doctor of physical therapy. And with my channel, I take a look at sports injuries and I explain them so that they're a little bit easier to understand. I also go to the specific anatomy of the injury and talk about what that person should expect when in rehab. If you like this content and you want to see more of it, please hit that thumbs up and subscribe to the channel because I will be making more videos in the future regarding sports injuries, rehabilitation, and other physical therapy related content. Also, if you have any comments or questions, please leave those in the comment section below. Now we see here on the injury video that as he is in the air, he's going to make contact with the goaltender. And as he comes to the ground here, he's going to essentially put out his hand and land with his arm in this position known as external rotation, as well as abduction. So here I have a model of the shoulder, and essentially the glenohumeral joint is the joint that we're going to focus on for this video because that is the joint that can suffer this anterior shoulder dislocation. So the GH joint or the glenohumeral joint is formed of the head of the humerus, which is right in through here. That is the ball joint. And then we have the glenoid right in through here on the scapula, which is known as the socket. And this forms that GH joint, also known as that ball and socket joint. One other piece of anatomy that is located inside the shoulder joint is known as the shoulder labrum. And essentially what that is a ring of fibrocartilage, which goes all the way around here, and it provides an articular surface essentially for that head of the humerus to attach to. And we often hear about labrum tears, and these are significant because any sort of disruption in that labrum can lead to some shoulder instability. So it's important to know that that is also something that's located deep within the shoulder. So let's go over the motion that people often dislocate their shoulder in. So it's going to be in that abduction position. So abduction is when the shoulder or the arm is going to be moving up from the side like this. And then this is combined with something known as external rotation, where the arm is going to be turned this way coming out. Or if you have the arm bent, it looks just like this. And that looks like the position that Robertson's shoulder is in as he makes contact with the ground. So he is reaching out for the ground. The shoulder is somewhat abducted out to the side. The arm is in external rotation. And in this position, he's getting all of his body weight coming down, essentially providing that force going through that GH joint. So as we look on the model here, as the head of the humerus is going to be sliding anteriorly, that's going to be placing a lot of stress on all of the structures located on the front portion of the shoulder here. The one that's visualized on this model is known as the GH ligament or the glenohumeral ligament. Oftentimes this becomes damaged because the head of the humerus is coming forward. We can also damage that internal labrum and cause a disruption in that as well. And finally, there is a group of 4 muscles that we know as the rotator cuff, which contribute to overall shoulder stability as well. And in a shoulder dislocation, that can be affected as well. When a person is thought to have suffered a shoulder dislocation, they're going to be placed in something like a sling or an immobilizer, which, as we look at the picture here, as he's walking off the field with the medical staff, they actually have that shoulder wrapped in sort of a sling, a makeshift sling that they essentially made with his shirt. And it's important to note the arm position here because the arm position that he's in is internal rotation and adduction or adduction. So the exact opposite position of where we would dislocate the shoulder, he is going to be in that to essentially provide as much protection until he can get to the hospital and be evaluated. When he goes to the hospital, essentially what will happen is if that shoulder has stayed out of the GH joint, then it will require a medical professional to essentially relocate that. And then from there, that's when the recovery process is going to start. And he'll have some advanced imaging to see if any of those other structures have been damaged. Now let's talk about a rehab timetable if in fact he is dealing with a shoulder dislocation. Basically, what's going to happen here is that the initial phases, whether it be anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks, that shoulder is going to be immobilized. It's going to be in a sling because you want all of those structures on the anterior portion of the shoulder to heal, especially that GH ligament, which becomes damaged in this sort of an injury. Then at about the 7-week mark, this is when we can start to work on strengthening, and we can essentially start working on range of motion as long as it's going through a pain-free range of motion of the shoulder. You don't want to put this person through any extreme ranges of motion, especially the abduction and external rotation position, because at that stage, they are still very sensitive. Finally, at the 8 to 12 week range, then the person should have full range of motion, and we can start to get really advanced with strengthening. And then after that, that's when a person can return to sport. Now, this does depend on whether or not this is the first shoulder dislocation that a person's had compared to if they've had several of them. So that can change the rehab timetable a little bit, but essentially at about the 12-week mark, this is when somebody can go back to playing sports. So we wish Robertson the best of luck moving forward. Hopefully, if it is a shoulder dislocation, he's able to bounce back quicker than most. It really just depends on his clinical presentation at the time and how many of those other structures are implicated. If you like this sort of content, I'm gonna go ahead and link a playlist of mine where I talk about some other soccer and shoulder related injuries. So if you want, you can go ahead and click and watch those. Thank you again for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.